Those are a lot of really good questions, and it's a huge question, actually. I think I would just start by saying that, in my experience as an architect and then later an architecture critic and kind of journalist, looking historically, the city has been a problem for architects since Vitruvius, essentially. And in any time, there's always another way in which the architect kind of conceptualizes how they relate to the city. Given where we are now in the 21st century and the kinds of urban problems and difficulties that megacities all over the world, not just Mexico City, face, it's really a kind of pressing challenge for architects to figure out where exactly is that space that they intersect with and kind of work on the city. In kind of like the simplest possible terms and kind of talking to architects in the United States, it's often thought that the city is basically what's outside of the building. It's what kind of begins at the perimeter of a site. It's everything that's beyond, and it's actually not really part of the purview of an architect. But I think we're starting to see interesting ways in which architects are conceptualizing how their work kind of impacts and kind of can take on meaning in an urban context. So buildings that are thought of as kind of catalysts for neighborhoods or redevelopment projects at the kind of building scale, but also things like kind of networked interventions and tactical urbanism and things like this are really on the cutting edge. The 20th century and the 21st century is really about the globally operating architect, so someone who works in different contexts all the time, and cities are always part of this. But from my perspective as a critic and journalist, I really think of my work as trying to advocate for architecture in this kind of urban scenario. So to not pessimistically say that architects cannot fix the city. We might not be able to answer all of the questions, but I think design absolutely has a central role to play. So my role as a critic is really just to kind of champion that and be a cheerleader for this. It's a really vexing question because perennially you have architects who say there's really nothing they can do. The problems of the city are too large. Or even the kind of domain of politics is something that's foreclosed for architects. It's not really the domain that they can work in. But I think more and more what we realize is that architecture is always constituted through politics and kind of political action and political belief. So I would really contest the idea that architects don't have agency. I think that the best architects can kind of assemble coalitions and assemble a vision, and that this can be in itself a kind of catalyst for change and the redevelopment of the city. So in that sense, I think architects are absolutely at the center, actually.